This is not the video about Shane Dawson that I thought I would be making this year, but I feel like I have to. Before we dive into it, a few disclaimers, setups, what have you. First, if you're one of my subscribers, you might notice that this isn't usually what I upload. You should know that I recently graduated, and so I'm kind of transitioning away from posting about college because I'm not in college. And I was planning to do like a more gradual transition into commentary, as well as other stuff maybe. But I saw what happened on the timeline yesterday, and I just needed to make this video. So here we are. Second of all, if you're not aware of what's going on, I'm gonna try and give a quick recap, because this isn't really a drama video. This isn't like the tea. This is gonna be my commentary about some of the implicit issues in the situation, especially for people like me who are fans or were fans of Shane Dawson. Also, as a disclaimer, this is not meant to accuse Shane of anything. I'm speaking of allegations. Please don't get me in legal trouble. I haven't done this before. So if you really know nothing, first of all, Shane Dawson is a massive YouTuber. He has started making these like series where they have, 6 to 12 episodes that are all like hour long, and they're kind of done in a vlog style but a little elevated, and these have been getting tons of views, tons of attention, especially in the last couple of years. Second, Shane Dawson has, even previous to right now, been called out for doing all kinds of problematic things, but a lot of that was really far in the past and in the context of his sketch comedy, where the main accusation or problem people have is that he did blackface, but some people have been more forgiving of him apologizing for that because it was in the context of a character for comedy sketch purposes, so it wasn't intentionally insidious. But he does have that sort of existing problematic call-outs. Third, recently Shane's been getting even more negative attention because of his association with Jeffree Star, who has been in some of his series, I think 2 of them, and Jeffree has gotten even more call-outs for being problematic, mainly being racist. These include more recent statements to where people aren't really convinced that he's changed. So Shane's association with him has also been criticized. So finally, what happened yesterday is that I opened up Twitter to see these tweets from Jaden Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, and they are basically saying that Shane Dawson did something gross. I don't want to get into detail. I haven't even seen what it is, because I usually don't like to see what it is because it can be very upsetting to me. So I just know the general idea, which is basically that he was sexualizing a child, which was Willow Smith, when she was like 9 or 10 or 11. I can't remember the age I saw. Basically being kind of really not cool, and the sort of thing that isn't excused by saying it was 10 years ago, because everyone knew sexualizing children was super not okay 10 years ago, even if there is some dispute about whether 10 years ago people knew that you shouldn't be racist. Honestly, I haven't even looked into all of the tea yet, because what this video is going to be is me kind of thinking about how to approach this as someone who really appreciates what Shane Dawson has made, and how to go through the process of deciding how I should react to it, and sort of what I think are the arguments behind the different ways that you might react. Just a disclaimer that this is not at all going to be specific to Shane, except in being specific to my appreciation for everything that he's made in the last few years. Honestly, I usually just watch Angelica's video about drama, and that's like all that I know about the situation. So if you're wanting to know what went on, I'm probably gonna recommend Angelica's video. Let's go. A year ago, I would have called myself a Shane Dawson fanatic. I was so hyped for his releases. I would sit down and watch it with my friend on our big TV. We would set up the HDMI every single day that a new video came out. We had to watch it within 24 hours. The reason I was really excited about what Shane was doing was because it felt like it was kind of revolutionizing the connection between online video creators and traditional TV programming, in that he was really pushing the vlog format to a place where it felt like reality television, but it retained the identity of YouTube content. I was just inspired by this. I thought it was so cool. I thought it might be like the first example of a place that YouTube could be going where it would be able to be taken more seriously by traditional media. I was not always a huge fan of his choice in subject matter, but I really just loved what he was doing with the medium, and I thought he could make anything interesting and entertaining because of how he used film. But honestly, even before those tweets kind of shook my system, I had already started to doubt how much I wanted to support Shane, mainly because of the issues I mentioned with him continuing to support Jeffree Star, and me feeling more and more so like Jeffree Star is not someone that I would want to support monetarily. With that in mind, let's jump into the first thing that you need to consider when we're talking about whether we can separate Shane and his problematic actions and maybe not liking him as a person from what he's made. Because instinctually that's something I want to do. I want to say that I can like Shane's videos even if I don't like Shane, but there's a lot of reasons that might not be the case. And the first is economics or finances. So you have to consider, particularly with artists that are alive, like Shane is, because I'm going to frame these arguments as pertaining to any sort of art, but kind of grounded in Shane, but also use other examples. So if you're consuming art that was written by a racist white guy, but it was written in the 1700s and he's dead and it's in the public domain and nobody's really making money off of it, especially not the man himself, I think that's a lot easier to justify because you are not giving financial support to that person. You're not enabling them to be influential, to be wealthy even. You aren't giving them a good life with your consumption. But with Shane, with YouTubers specifically in this day and age, it is impossible, or practically impossible, to consume what they make without supporting them financially. Because first of all, you watch the ads on their video. If their video is monetized, that is direct money from your consumption going to them. That would be like you directly support a musician by buying their concert ticket. You directly support them by buying their CD. But the thing with YouTube is it doesn't feel like you're giving them money because you're not giving them your money. But you are still putting money in their pocket by watching their videos. Additionally, you are indirectly financially supporting them, basically by adding to their perceived popularity, which is how they are able to secure brand deals and money from other sources, is by demonstrating the amount of views that they get and the amount of engagement that they get and all of that. So even if you have your ad block on, you say, I'm not giving them any ad money, you're still giving them your view. And especially if you're commenting angrily, you're giving them both a boost in the algorithm, because everyone that clicks on that video is telling the algorithm that this is something that they want to watch and that therefore other people probably want to watch. So you're helping it get seen by more people. And also your contribution to that view number is going to be able to be used by that creator to get money from other sources, because that's how this realm of influencers works now. And so you have to consider that by consuming that work, you are putting money in their pocket. So then you have to ask, by my value system, according to my morals, do I want to be putting money into this person's pocket? And I think this is where it gets complicated, because when I'm trying to decide for Shane if I want to watch his future videos, knowing that that supports him directly, I have to ask myself, do I think he deserves to be receiving money from me, basically? Even if that money's not coming out of my pocket, I am the reason that he is getting it. And so this is where we get into, I really have to decide if I think Shane deserves that. According to me, I think this is absolutely a decision that each individual should make and should be intentional about, because a lot of these questions don't have simple answers. And so I'm going to get into what I think the process is and what you are deciding when you choose to either support or not support an artist. So first of all, you might argue that you are consuming it critically, which means you're watching it with the intent of disagreeing with it, but understanding it in order to disagree with it from an informed place. This isn't necessarily the case, though, if the things that make that person somebody you don't like might not be a part of their work at all. So then this sort of way of justifying consumption of it kind of falls through. Then we have to get into, how do I really decide what I know about this person and what kind of person they are? Because the problem you run into, and I think one of the underlying mechanisms of like cancel culture and how controversial all of it is that we have a very different perceived relationship with a YouTuber than we do with a traditional celebrity. This is a function of the media, the fact that YouTubers are looking right at you, you feel like they're talking to you. And really, when you're a fan of a YouTuber, you feel like you are their friend. But the problem is that they don't know you. They don't think of you as their friend, like you specifically, because they don't know anything about you. They don't know who you are. They don't know anything. And so we approach these kind of situations thinking this is a disagreement with a friend, or my friend did something that I don't really like. And so we have this set of expectations that is built on the premise of this person being our friend, which becomes a problem because the other side of that exchange doesn't see this as a equal standing between friends. Think about how you would approach a friend doing something like this, something that you don't agree with, that you think is really basically. You would want to talk to them. You'd want to have a conversation. You would want to try and understand if they know what they did wrong and if they truly feel bad about it, if they regret it, if they feel remorse for that action. And you would want to have a conversation that gives you hope that they're going to do better, that they're not going to do the same thing again, they're not going to do even the same level of thing again. But that conversation requires a few things that we don't have with YouTubers. First of all, there is not an equal playing fields between two people in any sort of conversation that takes place online. On Twitter, it's that YouTuber's one voice against hundreds or thousands of voices. They can't have a simple civil exchange with one of those thousands or hundreds of voices because it's going to be interrupted by people who are not approaching it with the same level of civility or who have already moved past this and come to a different resolution in their mind. And so because of that, the YouTuber feels not necessarily safe saying the kinds of things that they would be able to say to a friend because it's so public, because there are people who are going to be adversaries also able to weigh in on what they're saying. But also, the internet makes truth a lot harder to discern. So if you're having a conversation with your friend, you can tell when they're being genuine. You can tell when the things they're saying align with what you have seen them do, what you know they believe. You can, in general, figure out how skeptical you should be of what they're saying because you have the full picture of who they are as well as how they're communicating in that moment. The internet is like a filter that removes that ability to discern truthfulness. So in purely text or written formats, you don't know how edited that is. You don't know if they're the only one that wrote it. You don't know how much they're just saying what people want to hear, basically. It can be very scripted. Maybe they put it in the tone that they're known for online, but it doesn't necessarily have that assurance of real vulnerability. And even in a video format with apology videos, which are so popular, they could be, to put it harshly, acting. When you sit in front of a camera, you are performing. Even if you're trying to be truthful, you're trying to tell statements that you really mean, the thing is that nobody wants to put up a video that's going to get them further attacked. They don't want to admit to a weakness that they don't have a solution for. There's a whole lot of reasons why somebody might be performing in the way that they know people want to see, but that isn't necessarily reflective of their reality. And that's not to say that people can't be telling the truth, can't be super real, can't be vulnerable, but it's just that we as a viewer have no way of assuring ourselves that they are those things because there's this ability to filter and to perform and to give people what they want instead of giving them the truth. So this basically results in a one-way communication that we can't really verify the validity of. And so we can't have this conversation with a friend, even though that's what subconsciously we probably want because we think this person is a friend. And so this is why we get to this point where people get really angry because they feel like these YouTubers owe them that conversation and it's impossible to get. And so you end up with cognitive dissonance, I think, basically, where you're like, this person is my friend. I want to understand and forgive them. But because this person is not really your friend, they can't do what you want them to do in order for you to feel like you can forgive them, which is how you end up with reactions of people either forgiving without thinking critically, without demanding very much, without asking very much. So just over forgiving potentially. Or people who get super upset and go the cancel route, which if you think about how this feels for us thinking they're our friends, if your friend refused to talk to you about something they did wrong, if they seemed disingenuous and you didn't believe that they could change, what would you do? You would cut them out of your life. That's basically what the viewer's side of a cancel is going on, I think, in their mind. I want to say this is all sort of my speculation using like a baseline of psychological knowledge, but like I don't have studies that show that this is literally what's happening. So this is all hypotheses about what I think is going on in our brains to make this happen. And I'm hoping that by talking about it and illustrating and pulling out what is probably going on subconsciously, we can be more intentional about what our reaction is instead of just doing what is sort of automatic in our brain to resolve that cognitive dissonance. So, to figure that out, let's think about what we would really want from our friend to forgive them and see what of that it is possible to get from a YouTuber. You would want them to understand what they did and why it's bad. This seems pretty possible to figure out, I think, even in apology videos when you can't tell how much of a performance it is. Generally, somebody has seen the consequences enough to realize, okay, this is why people are upset. But the part that's harder to figure out is how genuinely they're changing their beliefs, their ideas about what is good and bad, and adapting to being a version of themselves, basically, that would not do that thing. Because people can realize they did something wrong, but in their cognitive dissonance, not change deep down, like not really change who they are in a way that reflects learning. They can just learn, okay, I can't show that online. Those are very different things. And we don't want a friend to just not say racist things around us if they're still racist, you know? So that's an assurance that is very hard to get from YouTubers. But I think it's the key to saying confidently that you can forgive this person for their action is that real change. So, how do we figure out if they've really changed? We could follow the example of their friends. So if we assume that people close to this person can act as a proxy for us, we could say, you know what, if Andrew, Shane's camera person, editor, co-editor, collaborator on all things creative, but not his family, because I think family is in a wishy-washy area where they're a lot more forgiving than just a friend is. So let's say I think if Andrew can forgive Shane, then I believe that Andrew believes that Shane is changing, that Shane is genuinely doing everything he needs to become a better person. And then, therefore, I am also willing to forgive Shane. That's one way you can go. But that sort of relies on your trust in that friend of this influencer as your proxy. So it's not like guaranteed to really get to the root of what you're looking for. But I think it is one of the easiest cues or heuristics. And this is especially true for people who aren't also YouTubers or influencers in their own right. So like when James Charles got attacked and everyone distanced themselves from him, it was because they were protecting their own image, not necessarily as a statement or judgment on James himself. It can be really hard to find that sort of proxy that doesn't have their own motivation separate from just deciding whether this person is forgivable. Another potential overreaction or way to figure this out is you could literally put in your calendar a monthly event that says, like, has Shane Dawson been changing, or like something like that. And like every month you like, I guess I'm gonna open up Shane's Twitter and see what he's been up to, or whatever. The thing is, this kind of falls into the trap of you're only seeing what they're putting online still. But I think it can be useful once you get farther away from the big fallout to see whether they're falling back into old patterns. But this mainly applies if the person is doing that problematic thing in the present. I think when you're referring back to really old things that are coming up 10 years later, it's a lot harder to use this approach because you're not seeing them doing that behavior right before the fallout happens. If it was like somebody's been tweeting problematic things in 2019, you would be able to see if 3 months after a fallout, they started tweeting that stuff again, because it would make sense for them to fall back into that habit. Whereas this sort of like one really egregious thing that happened a long time ago, like you're obviously not going to see a repeat. And Shane doesn't currently make these kinds of jokes anywhere on the internet that I know of, so we're not going to expect to see the behavior again, and it's hard for us to understand what we would want to see. I think another thing to consider in this situation, given that it was so long ago, is that we don't really know what was underlying his actions. I haven't watched his videos, so I honestly don't know the explanation that he gave, but it's possible to conceive of multiple possible reasons why someone would think that making that kind of joke, because I'm assuming it was in the context of a joke, would be okay. I think one important thing to keep in mind, and I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but I just want to throw it out there as a consideration, is that it's possible for people to act in a way that is problematic as a self-sabotaging or self-destructive behavior, which would be like symptomatic of some sort of mental illness. And the main reason I bring this up is because we know that Shane has struggled a lot with hating himself, basically. He's talked about it very openly. And I think in the interest of not being too ableist, I just want to say that you should think about whether this person genuinely meant what they were doing, or if this behavior came out of a bad coping mechanism or something else where they did it not with the intent of helping themselves or getting positive attention or getting attention of any sort, but they did it with the intent of hurting themselves. I'm obviously not able to say if that's what happened with Shane, but I think you should consider that not all actions, especially from somebody with mental illness, come from a genuine place, and that people can do things with the intent of hurting themselves. And making this kind of joke could be like him thinking, I'm a terrible person, I hate myself, I am the absolute worst, and therefore I'm going to prove it by doing something that I know is terrible. That's the sort of like disordered thinking that could result in this action without Shane having any implicit or explicit belief that it's okay to make this kind of joke, you know?
Hello, editing me here. I wanted to quickly interject to build on that point because I don't think I totally finished it. I was trying to get at the idea that if somebody is doing something on the basis of a disordered mentality, then maybe we hold them to different moral standards. For comparison, think of if someone's addicted to meth and they ruin their life and maybe even hurt some of the people around them through that addiction. Do you see that as something that they did wrong, that they deserve some sort of like criminal retribution for? Or do you see that as a health issue that they need a cure for? And I think your stance on that sort of issue will likely transfer to thinking about if somebody did something on the basis of a disorder, that the disorder was making them hurt themselves, or because of the disorder they hurt themselves. What's your judgment of them? Maybe that made more sense, maybe not.
And so I think for that reason, it's also very hard to know when we're looking for changed behavior, what sort of change are we looking for? Because the thing is, if that's the case, we would actually want to look for Shane to not be self-sabotaging. And that would be the sort of motive for action that we would want to be helping him to get rid of. Whereas if this came from a place of ignorance, of thinking it was okay to joke about this, then we would want to be looking for a change to believing that in no situation is this okay, and knowing that some jokes can go too far. Those are very different changes to look for. The way that we as a friend would help him make that change would be very different in those two scenarios. That's why I think even looking for a certain kind of changed behavior or trying to like suss it out from what they're doing online can be really hard, because you don't know what change necessarily needs to be made, especially with what I would call not a repeat offender. Like, there are some influencers who stir up drama all the time and never take responsibility, blah, blah, blah. And as it happens over and over, you can kind of see the thread that connects all of those and say, I think this is what the problem is with that person. With Shane, we can't assume that they have the same motive, and so we can't really determine what change would be needed for him to move past it. Those are the two kind of methods I can think of for trying to decide if somebody is forgivable. I think personally, in this situation with Shane, I'm going to be looking to someone like Andrew to see what his reaction is, to see what his evaluation of where Shane is coming from is. But I'm also going to be looking to see Shane sort of disengaging in some of the other things that he's been criticized for more recently. So things like associating with Jeffree Star without calling him out, or making videos that make light of mental health issues like this whole Jake Paul series was accused of. I'm going to be just expecting Shane to do better, because I would say we've gotten to like the end of the rope, and if he can't make those changes, I'm going to assume that he hasn't grown from the person he was when he did this very egregious offense in the past. Finally, once you've kind of fallen towards one side or the other, if you decide that this artist, this person, this individual human is unforgivable to you, or you don't think they deserve your forgiveness, what do you do about their creations? So this is the part that I think people really need to think about and understand, is that if you are canceling Shane, if you think that anyone on YouTube is bad, is unforgivable, can you enjoy what they make separate from not liking who they are? And I think Shane is going to be a particularly good example of this, because of how his creations aren't entirely rooted in who he is as a person. Like, his personality shows through. He is present as a character in all of his videos, but he's also kind of getting closer to the more separate works of art that we're used to seeing from Hollywood, from TV shows, from movies. And the thing is, a lot of us will still watch movies even if we know that their producer is a if we know that the actor has been accused of sexual harassment. So, what do we do about consuming art on YouTube if we know that we don't like the person creating it? There's a few reasons you could argue that you still want to consume that art. You could think that it's important to the overall canon, or it's making a contribution to the field that you as a creator or critic of that field need to understand firsthand in order to contextualize it within the rest of the field. So this is sort of how I initially felt about Shane's work, is that I make videos, I'm also interested in working in television, and I think this sort of meeting of those two styles of filmmaking is really interesting and really important for us to explore from a artistic standpoint of wanting to expand the horizons of video or film as a medium. But we have to weigh that sort of side of things against how much we're supporting the creator and how much we don't want to support the creator. Like, you can pirate a movie if you feel like it's important to the canon, but you don't want to put any money in anyone's pocket because the producer is trash. You can pirate it pretty easily usually, and usually without many consequences if you know what you're doing. Not that I'm encouraging anyone to break the law. But with YouTubers, there's not really pirated versions of these videos to watch usually. Nobody is making a habit of re-uploading every single Shane Dawson video to another channel because you can just watch it on Shane Dawson's channel. And also, that other channel would get copyright striked for doing it, probably. You can use your ad blocker, but you're still contributing to their numbers if you're watching it on their video. One approach I like is watching criticism videos on the topic, which with a big YouTuber like Shane will exist. But the thing is that if you're watching it for the purpose of understanding it and evaluating it artistically, you're not really getting to experience the artistic vision when you're watching snippets within another video. I will say that I think if you watch a channel for entertainment purposes, it's a lot harder to justify it because there are replacements. The argument comes into play when you have an interest in it that cannot be substituted with other works. So then you really have to weigh, for you personally, how important do I think it is for me to see this piece of art and to consume it versus how important is it to me not to financially support this person in any way. And I think with YouTubers, a lot of the time it's going to come down to if you think that they're a bad person, if you think they're not trying to change, that's going to be more important than watching what they make. But I'm personally having this crisis because of how much I valued what Shane made on its own. But I really think that if you like what Shane makes and you're invested in Shane as a person and you see him as a friend, all of these things are interconnected. If you decide that Shane is unforgivable, you should not consume his work. But you have to try really hard to therefore not let your valuing of his art weigh on your decision to forgive him or not. You have to separate liking his videos from deciding whether you can support his videos. That is why I'm very hesitant to directly watch what he's putting up on his channel right now, because I don't want to add to the growing infamy of somebody when I'm not sure if I want to be supporting them. In conclusion, this is a mess. You should try to find ways to understand somebody before you make a judgment. You should try to understand that they are human, and your judgment being rushed doesn't do any favors to acknowledging them as a human. But humans are flawed, and some people don't want to fix their flaws or aren't ready and willing to change themselves. So if you think that somebody is not willing to change themselves in a way that you think they need to, you really should stop supporting them online. But if you value their work, if you really care about what they're making and what that piece of art is, you can still find indirect ways to consume it, to have an impression of what is being made, while still holding that artist accountable. So basically, I'm going to be watching criticism videos until Andrew can convince me whether or not to forgive Shane. This is so hard. But yeah, I feel like I don't know if I really came to a conclusion, but this is the end. Yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think there's a better way to go about it, because I really don't know.